Hello and welcome to the Healthcare Advocate. I am your host, Matt Dinsmore. We are here today to talk about something that affects 3 million people a year and nearly 1 out of 9 full-term pregnancies. We're going to be talking about postpartum depression. I don't know if that was a shocker to you, which is different than just baby blues, which affects 8 out of 10 women. And if you just do simple math, that's 4 out of 5. So, I mean, crazy amount of people suffer with this and kind of a condition that doesn't have a ton of awareness. And so the goal today is to help bring awareness. And to help me do that, I have Miranda Cheney with me. Say hi, Miranda.
Hi.
Hi. She is married, has 2 kids, and does some amazing photography work. Miranda, thanks for coming on. And if you could just tell us, tell your story a little bit. When did you find out that kind of what you had was more than just maybe baby blues, or like when did that click it?
Yeah, so I have 2 kiddos, like you said. I had postpartum depression. I was diagnosed after my second with my daughter, and she's 3 years old now. So I went in one day. It was actually just your standard postpartum check, and like at those appointments, they ask you questions on a questionnaire. And I remember sitting there thinking, for my circumstances, given I have a new baby and I have a toddler, I'm doing okay. It's not that bad. I'll be okay. Mm-hmm. And I, passed the questionnaire. When I went in the room, the doctor said, everything is great. Everything looks great. And as she was asking me questions and just following up on my recovery, my daughter started to cry. And in that time, I couldn't console her. There was nothing I could do to calm her down. I couldn't calm myself down. I was crying. I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't focus on the questions she was asking me. And I remember her kind of continuing the conversation, and for her it must have been so normal, a baby crying and a new mom and all of these things. And it wasn't after a few minutes of this where she was watching me try to calm her down that she stopped me and asked me how many times a day this was happening. And through my tears, I'm like, it's not that bad. It's mm-hmm. okay. And she was like, no, this isn't a normal, this is a little more than that. And so,
at that point when you're in the office and you're losing it, right? And mm-hmm. not being, were you wondering what is going on, or is that?
Not really. It was kind of like, this is just happening every day. This is new motherhood. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm stressed. I am not sleeping well, because I have a baby. And so this is just what it is.
Yeah.
I knew it was more than what I had with my son, because I didn't have postpartum depression with my son. But again, I thought, well, now I have 2 kids, and
sure.
And I have a toddler that's running around, and I just didn't really ever think that that's what was going on. I didn't think that my not being able to focus and my not being able to sleep and all of those types of things, I just thought it was just motherhood. And so at one point she picked my daughter up, and she said, she wanted to order some more testing, some more hormones and different things, and she was like, I'm going to give you a minute. And she took the baby, and while she ordered the tests and stuff, and she gave me a minute to just calm down, in the room, and have a minute to just myself, because
wow.
I was so overwhelmed. And she saw it. She could see it, and that's her profession, so I'm sure she just kind of spotted it. And then she came back and said, well, it's not normal how you're feeling. It is normal that you are feeling it. And she just helped me take the steps to get better. And we did medication, and I went in for weekly visits with her. She was very good about it, but that's when I found out. I never really said this is what I have. It was mm-hmm. more like she said, this is what's going on.
Were you resistant to the her saying, hey, I think this is more than just baby blues? Were you ever resistant to it and said, I don't need this?
No, I think once she pointed it out, and once she explained a little more what was happening, and then the following week when I went in for my first follow-up after that appointment, we had a lot of the test results back and stuff, and she was like, these are all factors that could cause or could increase your risk for that. And so it just kind of made sense then. And I knew that postpartum depression was a possibility, but I didn't know that that's what was happening.
Sure.
And I didn't really resist it, because at the time it made sense. It mm-hmm. made sense as to why I couldn't, focus. I couldn't bond with my baby. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating. All of those things that I thought, I don't really remember it being like this with my son, but I didn't go past like what could that be then if I didn't feel this with my first.
So that was at the 6-week mark, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
when did the symptoms, looking back, would you say, okay, this was, I think when it went from blues to depression, like when did that happen?
I would say probably a week and a half before that appointment. I remember there was one morning, my son was running around playing. I had my daughter and a bouncer at my feet. I was sitting in a chair, and I looked at her thinking, what have I done? Like, we were so happy. Our life was so great. Like, what have I done? I'm not happy. I'm not, but again, at the time it was still just like, I'm just tired. I'm just overwhelmed,
Sure.
But I remember that, and that was prior to that appointment. But I was never going to admit that.
Yeah.
I was never going to tell my doctor, like, I think I've really messed up my life. I was never going to admit that something that should be so happy and such a blessing in my life was just not at that time.
And then, so once you had the diagnosis, you ran these tests, you started some medications. I'm sure you started non-pharmacological interventions as well.
Yes.
And how long before you felt like, all right, I'm gaining some control, or things are starting to get better?
So it was a good 6 weeks that I would say I met with her weekly, and a lot of that was like adjusting the dose of the medication I was on and checking hormone levels and different things like that. And it was probably at the 6-week mark that I felt like, I remember telling my husband, it was like I could take the day on. I could handle the day. It wasn't like sunshine, rainbows, and that kind of stuff, but it was like I could just handle the things that were coming at me. Where before I couldn't even get to the point of like, how do I handle this?
Yeah.
But now I could see that the baby was crying. I could make sure like she's fed, or does she need her diaper changed, or handle my son that was having a tantrum. Like I could just deal with those things now instead of being so crushed by them that I couldn't process them. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe this is a little looking forward, but how long before you felt like you were, I don't know, fully recovered? I don't know if that's the right, until you're back to your normal self.
Yeah. So I would say I probably struggled for a good 18 months. And I think that's, I think I extended my time because I was on medication. And when I was diagnosed, we were about to move to Spokane because I was born and raised in California.
Okay.
And we were about to move to Spokane. So we had a lot of outside factors that were also weighing on me. My husband was already gone working for a company in Spokane. I was home alone with these 2 kids while dealing with the depression. And
in a new town where do you have any family support here?
So, well, here, yes. But where I was when this was all happening, my family lived about an hour away.
Okay.
So I was very alone.
Yeah.
But once I moved to Spokane, insurance and the move and all of that, I kind of had to just quit cold turkey the medicine.
Yeah.
And that's like not recommended.
All right.
It's not recommended. And so I think I prolonged. I didn't really fully resolve it. I just think like eventually like my body regulated, eventually all the craziness in my life regulated. But it was way longer than it should have been had I properly handled like the recovery part of it.
Sure.
And so I think that that's like a big thing. Like we need to be absolutely recovering from it instead of just let it linger.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, I think it was longer than it needed to be, but it was a while. So
well, clinically, we'll see that, from a practitioner perspective, whether it's postpartum depression or any other type of depression or generalized anxiety disorder or whatnot, is that the more factors that are, the more plates spinning, if you will, contributing to that depressive or anxious state, the harder it is. Sometimes the longer it is, the more treatment recommendations, the greater patience you'll need to have with yourself, Because if it's not one triggering event, you just can't control that one thing and then it'll all be better, right? It's like it's a multifaceted, reason. So it makes sense.
A lot of the moms I've talked to about postpartum depression actually did say they had so much. Like a mom I talked to this morning, she was like, we were moving at the time. My husband, there was just all of these things that, and then you have the biggest change of your life, right there. And so it's just so many factors that you're right. Like you need to be able to handle all of it, and not just say like, okay, I did this and now we're done.
Yeah.
It's a lot. to handle.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of talk about, there's certain things that does increase women's risk for postpartum depression. For those listening, or, whether somebody who's pregnant or recently had a kid, or you yourself are pregnant and having a kid, there are some associations with these, but I think you'll shine some interesting light a little bit. So things that will increase your risk for postpartum depression are prenatal depression. So if you're depressed, while you're pregnant, you're more likely to be significantly depressed after. Prenatal anxiety, history of previous depression. If you have maternity blues, they say that this is a precursor into postpartum depression, which is, again, that means 4 to 5 women experience that. Or, recent stressful life events, probably, such as like getting ready to move or moving. Inadequate social supports, like a family might be a long way. Poor marital relationship, childcare stress, difficult infant temperament, all can play a role. Did you have any history of depression during your pregnancies or before?
I did not. I actually, even family, I don't think I have anybody in my immediate family that has a history of depression or anxiety. I didn't in my pregnancies. They were pretty typical. And so that's why it was really out of the blue for me. It really did hit me by massive surprise. And that's why I didn't really understand what was happening, because I don't have any like existing experience with that. And so I think, but like some of the things you read off, like major life changes, my husband was gone. I mean, he was working and we were great, but he was gone. My family wasn't there, and I had 2 small children that I was now responsible for. And I was not, my hormones were out of whack. There was a lot going on, which some of the hormones that I had do increase risk of depression. So all of those factors together, but I had no way of seeing that big picture until my doctor said, like, there's a lot going on here.
Do you think you ever would have come to the conclusion?
I'm not sure I would have. And I was talking to my mom recently, and I thought, I need to tell my doctor thank you. I mean, now I'm 2 states away, and it's been years, but she really did her due diligence. Like, she really did help me. And I wonder how many times she's done that with women before, because a lot of times we don't see it. It's somebody else that's saying, like, I just don't think you're okay. I think that there's a lot going on in your life, and maybe we need to search for some help. But she caught it, and she was very good about it. And I don't know, I am a very strong person. And so to admit that I felt weak or I felt broken was not something that I would have ever done without her saying, hey, this is happening. So,
How did your family take it?
So,
husband and
So it was the worst to tell him because I was so nervous that, he could not trust me with our kids. And that was my only job at the time. I stayed home with them. He was out of town. Like, now he had to trust a wife that was in a very dark place. And now we knew I was in a very dark place. So it wasn't something that we could just think that maybe, it wasn't just like days are hard. It was like, no, there's a problem. So it was hardest for me to tell him, to say, like, hey, the doctor said that this is what's going on. It kind of makes sense. And then we start researching it and seeing, like, what it all really means. But he was, I mean, my husband, but he's so gracious and so kind, and did everything he could from away. And he would check in with me and check up with me. And when he was home, he just tried to be so hands-on and kind of give me that time to take a shower or run an errand just by myself to breathe. And he was very good about it. My parents, I didn't ever really talk to about. Actually, this whole thing, bringing it to light, has allowed me to talk to them, but I felt very ashamed and embarrassed by it. And like I said, I'm very strong. I've always done really well in school. I've always excelled at things. And so I felt like I wasn't excelling at motherhood. Like, the one thing that I felt like I was created for, I felt like I was failing at. And so to admit that to my family was extremely hard. And I had sisters that had babies, and they were doing so great and raising these beautiful children. And I just felt like, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? And I couldn't I just never really, my sister lived out of state and she was coming to visit very shortly after I got diagnosed. And I remember texting her saying, I got diagnosed with this. I don't want to talk about it. I just want you to know, because I just didn't want her to come and be like, what is going on? You know? But I didn't want to elaborate on it because I just felt weak. I felt broken. So I didn't want to share that with my family. I didn't want them to look at me differently. I didn't want them to think like, maybe she's not going to be a good mom. But those are all things that I think we put on ourselves. Like, I don't think that other people think that. So,
Do you think part of it, with your parents, obviously, they care and love you, but maybe they don't know quite what to say or what to do? Or
I think as a parent now, if my kid said like, hey, I had this problem, I would just want to fix it. I think parents want to fix what they can. They don't ever want to see their kids hurting or in a spot that maybe they're not 100% stable. And so I knew that they wouldn't know what to do because they couldn't fix it, but they wouldn't know what to say because they wouldn't want to hurt my feelings. I think that they would just have been very careful, and I think a lot of it is that I didn't give them that option because I didn't want to have to face it as well. Just telling my husband, it was like we could just keep it inside our home. And but telling my family and my sisters, it's like then it became like really real. And the fact that I do have to like deal with it. So
why so recently, obviously, you're, and we'll get to this in a sec, but you're going to be maybe raising some awareness and, just with your history, right? I could see many reasons of why you would want to just keep it in the home and keep it personal and something that really was out of your control, right? You know, it's like you can't control your hormone fluctuation or how you felt with the second pregnancy. You had a totally normal first one and the second one. But yet, instead of kind of I guess keeping it in the home, you've decided to bring it out in the open, not sweep it under the rug. Why?
So I felt like one of the biggest things that helped me kind of overcome it and get out of that was talking to a friend. I talked to my sister-in-law a lot, and what was weird is I didn't really start to talk to her about it until I had left the state. And it was almost like, because we were so far apart, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to see her tomorrow and then I have to face her in person. It was like I could be kind of like share, but not really have to face the news. But in that, a lot of people, as I started to like share here, share there, they were like, I've totally been there, or I knew somebody that was, or watch this documentary, read this article. And I feel like there are like resources out there to explain how you feel and explain like what you're going through, but I don't know if there's like one spot that you're like, hey, I feel safe enough to go here. So I just felt like I wanted to share my story. One, it's really hard. Even 3 years later, it's still hard because you're like, do people still think that I'm like not a good mom or, or not capable of being a mom? Or what if I have another baby? What are people going to think, But I wanted to share it because I had a friend who was actually part of what I'm doing, that she was like, the reason that I shared with you is because you shared with me. And then it starts to become like this community of women that we're like, we're not alone. Like we're not alone, and our husbands can connect, and people can say like, yeah, this is what's going on, and it kind of normalizes it a little bit. So it's not so taboo. It's not so shameful and embarrassing, because like you said, it's not something we can control. It's not something we choose. We would never choose that. So
do you feel like, I think, part of postpartum depression, and maybe clinically, I feel like I can never miss this part of postpartum depression. Maybe it's not really in the forefront of other people's mind, but you do think about like postpartum psychosis, where the depression is so great that women think about taking their own lives or the life of their child, right? Something that's like the very antithesis of motherhood, right? And it's so rare, but it gets so much news, right? And so it seems bigger maybe than it really is. Not that clinically we shouldn't screen for that, for every woman that is, postpartum has depression, but did you feel like that was, even now are like an inhibition to sharing, because it's like people are going to think I'm a wacko that wants like
yeah. So I think that's like part of the problem is people think that postpartum depression means that you are suicidal or means that you think you're going to take your life or your kid's life, and that's not most cases. I think those are very extreme cases, and there are definitely obviously cases out there, and we never want that to happen ever. But most cases are women that can't do daily life, that just are so overwhelmed. Like I remember clearly, I thought if I left, my family would be better off without me. And I wasn't suicidal, but I thought if I just walk out the door, I'm not a hindrance to them anymore. Maybe they'll find somebody that's a better mom to them, a better wife to them. Like I just thought they didn't need me. Wow. And that's more of the cases that I'm like, when I talk to women, like I have talked to women who were suicidal, and I've talked to women who are like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I just think that I'm in the way. I wasn't created to be a mother. I shouldn't be their mom. I'm not the best person for the job. And we all know we are. Like we wouldn't have been given those kids unless we were meant to be their moms. But in the time, it is very, very dark and very hard to like see that and to know that. So
wow, that is a really sad thought.
It is.
To think that leaving so that's going through your head or the heads of mothers, and that they think this is just, I don't know, within normal range or something like that. Like that is not. Well, okay, so tell us about what you're doing coming up and how you're trying to raise awareness, and so we can let the Facebook community know what's going on.
So I am hosting an event called Unveil Postpartum Depression. I'm a photographer, and I shot this session with 5 other mamas from in and around the Spokane area. We shot it here in Spokane. And it just really is, they're very raw, vulnerable images that depict the realities of living with postpartum depression. And some of them our kids are in them, and some of them it's just us women. I'm not in as many of them because I shot it, but they are very raw and very vulnerable, and you can feel the grief, and you can feel the darkness and loneliness. And we wanted to use those images to spread awareness and to reach out to women and say, hey, we're all in this together. You're not alone. And if you feel like this is what you're dealing with, that we're here. We're here for you. We wanted to be a tangible place for women to go, because the medical profession, like sometimes you only see them for 15 or 20 minutes in a very sterile office. It's hard to open up and say, these are the thoughts I'm having. And you don't want them, I think there are fears that your kids are going to get taken away, or that something extreme is going to happen, and so you want to reach out to another mom that can say, hey, that's not going to happen. Here's what, here's the steps that I took, what I recommend for you, just that real, honest, authentic connection. And so we're using this event to reach that mama that is like, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know if I should say it out loud. I don't know how to say it out loud, just so that she knows like we're here and we've been there before. And we'd love to take it further into MOPS groups and women's events and really spread the message, get it off of social media and the internet and directly into the hands of moms that need it. Okay.
Yeah. If we wanted to, and probably include in the show notes here, but where could people check out those photos?
So we have kind of kept a lot of them private until the event.
We want to see them.
Yes. Yes. I will be posting them afterwards. And you can find it on my website after the event on Tuesday evening. You can find them on my website at mirandacheneyphotography.com. But right now we've put some of them out there so people kind of get the idea. We'll show the whole gallery at the event. So if you really want to see them, they can come to the event too. But we will put them up afterwards. It is a very large gallery. It's over 60 images that these women created to share with other people and put this message out there. So
when's the event?
Tuesday evening, January 28th. So this coming Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. It's being hosted at Weathers and Associates downtown Spokane.
And I'm assuming that like you have to fill out a postpartum questionnaire, and if you have depression, then you get in. Those are the only people allowed in.
No.
Is that? Oh, okay. All right.
No. Obviously, women. We want women to come. Women that have had babies or are going to have babies. I've sold tickets to women who aren't quite married yet, but they want to be like aware. And then also husbands, spouses. Like men need to know the signs to look for, how to support, that kind of stuff. Like our spouses and our dear loved ones, the ones closest to us, it's so beneficial to know what to look for and how to support us and how to show up and how to help us through that because we can't help ourselves in that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I think Vinny was pulling up, or is that you, Sam? Somebody's pulling up your website. Sam's holding his thumbs. I can't see now. There's a big monitor in front of his face. So he was demonstrating kind of what your website looks like for people to kind of reach out and take a look at that event. I mean, I know as we have 4 kids of our own, and sometimes being a spouse, you just don't know, right? You don't know what's going inside their head, and I think women are generally tough, and I think like when it comes to motherhood, and they're protecting that, and so sometimes we don't know like what is going on inside your head or how severe it is, and if we could be aware of the signs, or just to look out for, to be an advocate, you know, for a wife if necessary, and be a great partner, I think that would be. Yeah,
I spoke to a friend. She said her husband went to a postpartum appointment with her and was very like asking the doctor, like, I don't think that this is normal. I think this is a little more than, you know, I know my wife very well, and this is so out of the norm for her. And I thought, how amazing is that to have your own advocate, somebody that really knows you and knows you so well, to say, I'm seeing all these signs, I'm recognizing all of these things, and I think we need some professional help. Yeah. So I think it's super important for husbands and loved ones to be there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so you said Tuesday night, the 28th. 28th, okay.
At 6:30.
Okay, awesome. We'll include a link of that address anyway for people to check it out and to be able to follow up on the time. Thank you for joining us live on Facebook. Big hello to everybody out there. This has been Matt Dinsmore with The Health Advocate. Please tune in next week for our next show. All right, take care.
Ask the host a question, recommend a guest, or hear this program again on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Spokane Talks Media.